Welcome to The Way, and today we have the privilege of interviewing Gerald, founder of the Pioneer Church, and Nathan Ferreira, who is co-author of this book, Sexual Healing. Welcome to The Way.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for coming. This book deals with pornography, which is, we believe, the elephant in the room that most churches don't discuss. However, I think we just need to point out that sex is given to us by God as just a gift for people who are in a married situation. So what I'd like to do really to start off by asking a question to you, Gerald. Do you think that pornography has distorted that natural act of love to such an extent now that it's debased some relationships?
Yes, I mean, just before the filming of this programme was an horrific case of a 13-year-old girl being raped by two 13-year-old boys. Now, when I was younger, that was completely impossible. It was physically impossible, it was psychologically impossible, and relationally impossible. But we found that the average age for a boy to access pornography was around 12, 13. So when all of his images on his laptop and now his iPhone are of this sort of thing, and they're the models that they've got. Of course, they don't know how their parents are behaving in a room called the bedroom, because that's not what they should be looking at anyway. But it is at epidemic proportions. If you just got a classroom full of guys and said, how many of those do you think are watching pornography? I'd go, pretty much all of them.
That's incredible statistics now, isn't it?
Yeah.
Nathan, perhaps I can ask you, according to the book, there's about 1 in 3 men are, I mean, we just said quite a lot more than that, but on average throughout the UK, 1 in 3 men are accessing pornography. Could you just share with us how you got into it, and the spiral you went through that you felt out of control?
Yeah, as Gerald said, it's probably a lot more than 1 in 3 now, but yes. I started just as a lot of other people start when they're 13, around just being inquisitive, and soon as you search for more, wondering if this is fulfilling, if this is not, so you realise, no, this is not at all, but I'm not too sure how to escape it, I'm not too sure how to deal with it. You don't know if you can approach people, it's seen as sometimes the worst sin, the elephant in the room as you suggested, but all of that, and my story is quite complex and intertwined, but you can read all about it in the first chapter of what I wrote in the book.
So just tell me how that, you went further into that, didn't you? You sort of lost control a little bit. Is that correct?
Yeah, I think it's a lie that maybe potentially that you have control over what you're seeing. I think many people would like to say that, oh no, I'm fine if I can view it when I can, and when I don't want to, I have complete power over it. But I think when you get to the state where you either kind of get into a situation where you're using it as a coping mechanism for external sources, or you're trying to find intimacy within relationships that you maybe don't have, or you maybe have developed a wrong approach, but it does become hard to kind of come out of.
Yeah. What about the fact that it's so easy to access? You've got iPhones, iPads, that sort of thing at the moment.
Yeah.
Do you think that's part of the problem, that it's very easy to access? And does that really have a detrimental effect on how we view women?
Yeah, I think it's a huge problem that it's, not only it's there, but it's very easy to get a hold of. Gerald saying is about when he was around my age, it'd be so much harder to kind of distort your view of women, distort your picture or your understanding of how sexual relations work. Whereas now it's a lot easier, and you can do it from 5 seconds and about 5 clicks. You can get something that can change your mentality and change your mind on things, which is incredibly dangerous for young people, especially when they're growing up and when you're learning, you're shaping what your thought processes are and how you do view other people. So it is incredibly challenging, and accessibility is a massive part of it.
As there are going to be a lot of parents looking at this video, and they are going to be a little bit apprehensive about what their children are looking at.
Yeah.
What sort of measures do you think they should take?
I think firstly, if you instill in your children that they are cherished and they are loved and they're made to be better than having a second-rate view of sexual relations, or a second-rate view of what intimacy is, what closeness and what healthy relationships look like. When they grow up, they'll kind of have an instilled reaction in them that actually I don't really want to look at this stuff. I'm not missing out here because I know what true relationships is. I know what it's based of. But practically, having filters on your computer, having certain sites blocked, we list a whole variety of things that you can do both within the book and on our website. There's a few links to even free bits of software that you can get to ensure that people aren't stumbling across something that they can potentially be a trapdoor into becoming more involved in this.
In your book, you mentioned that you got very close to suicide. Could you just walk us through that, because there may be people watching this that are going in that direction.
I think I got to a point whereby you understand the way that you're supposed to live. You understand that this is what I need to do. I need to live right. I need to not be involved in this stuff that's transforming and changing my view of not only other people but myself, the guilt that you feel, the shame that you feel, and being unable to kind of see a way out of it. You develop lies and you develop wrong ways and wrong pathways of thinking that limit your worth and limit what you feel that you can get out of. But what I would say to other people is that your importance is so much more than you may think. Your significance is so much more important than you may think, and begin to get around people who can encourage you, who can motivate you, who can really speak how loved and how cherished and how important you are, not just to us, not just to the people around them, but to God most importantly. That there are great plans, plans for hope and a future. So there's great things ahead if you choose to run into them and adventure into them.
You mentioned you put strategies in place to help you not fall back into your old ways. Could you just elaborate on that a little bit?
Yeah, I think firstly, my journey out of there, my journey into freedom, all stems out of intimacy with Christ. The only reason that we can be free and we were granted freedom is in order for us to have a relationship. And so remembering that and bearing in mind, okay, I'm free to have a relationship with the Father, is a great way of understanding and being able to apply different strategies within your thinking in order to work that out. And so firstly, do we know who we are in God? Do we believe that we are a son of God, that we've been adopted by Him, and that He sees us as important, that we are loved? And secondly, what are we heading to in our lives? What do we want our lives to reflect? And the acknowledgement of these things to start with is what's going to lead us into when you put more practical steps in your life. So when you are tempted, either by something that you see or by something that might come up on your computer, what coping mechanisms do you have? For myself, it was to instantly come against it and say, you know what, I Jesus is not something I want to do. That's not something that's going to benefit me. That's not who I am. That's not who I'm made to be. And so it starts with getting those little foxes, as it says in Song of Solomon, before they ruin, before they open up doors to bigger things. And so when you can cope with those small trigger points, is creating new pathways of thinking to prevent you from falling back into a lot of bigger consequences, and both for yourself and for other people as well. So it's really what you're trying to do is create a new thinking within, a new pathway of thinking, developing new responses over those old ones that you can so easily go down. So you're trying to create new responses that create, your brain physically creates new proteins to help you respond in a better way when those are built up, when those become stronger, you will take that route other than taking the old, well-worn route. And so it's practically coming up with ways of either writing down truths over yourself, coming against temptation with the truth of what you want for your life and the truth that this is going to separate you from God and what you really want. It's an intimate, important relationship with God where you seek after what He's giving you for your life. So, yeah.
Thank you.
You're very welcome.
If I can turn to Gerald.
Thank you.
There probably will be quite a few married people looking at this video at the moment who are experiencing perhaps sexual problems within their relationship. It could well be that one of them's backed off a little bit, and which has caused a frustration to the other partner, and there could be a tendency for them to visit pornographic sites to relieve the frustration. What sort of advice would you give to them?
Well, first of all, it's quite understandable that if someone is in tension in a relationship, they should turn somewhere for pleasure where there is no tension. But once they do that, they are now going down a tunnel of deception, lies, cover-ups, acknowledging to your partner, I've got no problem with this at all, when in point of fact it's a massive problem. And of course, the whole thing of porn and internet porn is, it is a deception. These are not two attractive people who love each other, believe in each other, want to bless each other, serve each other, and be together. They're a couple of prostitutes who are being paid to do a job to get you turned on. And unless you understand that's the world you're in, it's not the world of love and intimacy and care, as Nathan has said. It is a world of utter deception that hopefully will get you spending more money on porn. It's a terrible route to go. God gives grace for us to sit down with our partners, husbands, wives, whatever, and without putting pressure on them to talk through the nature of our intimate relationship.
We mentioned before that it's affecting quite a lot of men in particular, and I suppose we don't really know the percentages, but do you think it's affecting women now as well?
Yeah, we were quite surprised. First of all, when the book came out, there were numerous women at the launch and on the tour that we've just started who were saying we'd like to buy the book, and we were going, oh, it's not written for you. It's two Christian men, a guy who's been an addict and has been free now for over a year in a fantastic way, and for want of a better phrase, a father in the household of faith who's gone through singleness and marriage and children and seeing his children have children. It's not written for women at all, but in fact women still bought the book because they were in problems that we didn't understand. Time magazine a few months ago noted that about 24% of women have seen pornography in the UK, which I was quite surprised by. But to be honest, in all the interviews we've done, it's been surprise after surprise after surprise. This is at a depth we didn't imagine and a breadth we couldn't have imagined either. So it needs something very, very powerful along the lines Nathan has talked about to break, to create other wonderful habits, good habits, and to replace the old habits with really good habits. And that's true in marriage, it's true whether you're single.
If you take the view, which I think is mentioned in your book as well, that people are getting married later on, so we've got late 20s and early 30s, that can bring a history into that relationship.
Yes.
Of perhaps misuse of porn, etc.
Yes.
What advice would you give them? Because it could be a bit lopsided, because one of the partners might have been involved in it, the other one hasn't, and obviously there's got to be a period of adjustment in the marriage. How would you approach that?
I think first of all, the average age of a guy getting married is 27, 28, 29. Combination of factors, education, college, university, comes out at 23, 24 with 10, 20,000 pounds worth of debts. He's not about to get a mortgage, wants to work, get some money behind him, and then there's a relationship. 27, 28, 29, 30, that is about the age people get married, which means that they can be sexually active with themselves for over half of their lives. And these people are in the church, they're among God's people, they're normal people, they are sexual beings. No good pretending we're not sexual beings, we are sexual beings. The issue is, what are we going to do with our sexuality? And that's really what we cover in the book, in terms of protection, in terms of what we fill our minds with. My advice would be don't tell the girlfriend and don't tell the wife what you're doing. I know guys that had a perfectly good relationship with a girl, and a year, 18 months into the relationship, in the name of integrity and honesty and openness, they talk to their girlfriend and they just drop straight away. It's like, whoa, I don't want this in my marriage, thank you very much. Because she hasn't watched it and is not likely to do. Probably around 75% of women have not and will not view pornography. If you then go to your wife when you're married, what you're really saying is, I'm dissatisfied with you, this is where I'm going. You may think you're sharing in the name of integrity and honesty in an open relationship. She thinks you're putting pressure on her. So there are all these psychologies at work. It's absolutely important that within the church context we bring words like masturbation and pornography and some of the slang that young people use right out into the open. We talk about this in the same way that we might about when we don't support the Lord's work, when we're a little dishonest at times, when we're unkind or opinionated about people. Bring this out into exactly the same level. One of the problems with Christian leaders is that most of their congregations or audiences are all ages and both sexes. It's even more difficult to talk about these things then. So we're saying to Christian unions and universities and colleges and to churches, you need an occasional men's breakfast, you need an annual day, you need to occasionally bring this up on Sundays, not to offend people, but to let them know that we are aware this is going on. Very few of us have escaped clean, 100%, and this must be brought out into the open. The light destroys things. If you go into the garden and pick up a big flower pot, early spring, underneath are all sorts of creepy crawlies. As soon as the light comes, they're gone. And we're made for the light, but the enemy wants to bring us into darkness. So once you bring something out into the light, so I asked Nathan a question, we met in quite remarkable circumstances, which again, you need to read in the book. We sat down at a conference and I asked him what he calls the question. Once it was out into the light, everything began to change. It was already changing, in fairness, because Nathan had brought things out into the light, but that really cracked it open once and for all. And knowing who to share that with is very important.
So following on from that, do you think that pornography has become so mainstream now that it's affecting young relationships? In other words, look at the sex angle first, and then instead of taking a godly view?
Well, we've written lots of stories up in the book with the permission of the very people that we're writing about. And occasionally we've used pseudonyms. Ben, that's his first real name, because we've got several Bens in the book. He was at a large conference in Birmingham, and out of 2,500 people there was just one person I spoke to privately, and it was him. And it was all about what he's called to be and do, and what his identity is. It wasn't about sexuality or anything like that. I said, I don't normally do this privately, so this is my contact card. If you want to contact me, please do. Never expected to hear from him again. 3 nights later, in our house, he phoned to say, I've got a story to tell you. I have always struggled with porn. It has ruined my identity and has stopped me in my calling. I joined a program whereby you alert the last person you want to know you're visiting dubious sites, which was his mum. So he said, for weeks, I was completely free. Fantastic. And then he went and bought an iPhone. And on the first day, found out that everything on his laptop was on the iPhone. So that night he went to bed, viewed it all, and engaged in the behaviour that goes with it. Really let himself down, but then I know what happens psychologically. You think, well, I've blotted the copybook once and it won't hurt, so the second night he did the same, and the third night. Up until the night I met him, he had been involved in pornography and masturbation every single night for between 20 minutes and 2 hours for an entire month. No break at all. Then suddenly someone tells him, back to what Nathan has just said, you're valuable, you're cherished. Do you know who you are? This is your identity. You're the brother of Jesus, for goodness sake. You really are the brother of Jesus. And this is what we are all called to be generally, and it's what you're called to be specifically. And his whole life changed from that moment on. And in fact, I phoned him just a few days ago to say, we're on tour, we're telling stories, we don't want to tell stories that actually aren't true anymore. We only want good stories. And he said, I have slipped up once or twice this year, but since the whole of last year when you met me, from the moment you met me last year, I've been completely free of pornography and all the behaviour that goes with it. So there's tremendous hope out there for people, and they're not on their own.
That's an amazing story. Thank you. In your book, you've got a lovely phrase that says, "The battle starts with the mind, but is won in action." Can you explain what action people can take?
Well, I've got an idea that's a Nathan quote, so I think I need to give it to him.
Well, starts in mind by, as we say, and as all my main sort of speaking is about his identity. So battle starts in your mind. Who are you? What are you made for? And then are our actions reflective of what we think now in our minds? Are our actions reflective, and do they match up with who we are? Are we doing things that are helping our identity, or are we doing things that are hindering our identity? The more we do things to reinforce and to support and encourage who we are, and to encourage others and encourage who they are, the easier it gets to be free, and the more gloriously free we are, and the more we can get further in touch with what God wants for our lives and what God wants to do with not just you but with other people. And those actions are getting closer to God, those actions are being able to resist temptation, and those actions are actually asking questions, raising masturbation on a Sunday morning, raising sexual problems on a Sunday morning, and it's just exposing, as Gerald said, things to the light, opening things up, and those actions are just trying to live as closely and as best as we can to being who we are and who Christ calls us to be.
Thank you very much. I just want to say that it takes a lot of courage to do what you've both done. So I want to thank you on behalf of The Way, and also on the many people who view this, who I think is going to change many, many lives. So I really appreciate you taking the time to do this.
Thank you.
And I just want to close by saying that sexual healing is available in all good bookshops, including Amazon, and we very much encourage you to buy this book. It's a very good read, and I'm sure it will challenge you. Thank you for joining us.